It's been many months since I last played Starfield, and we've had some incredibly successful videos on the channel playing this game, totaling nearly 250,000 views, but I realized that I've never actually sat down and reviewed the game itself. So, now that we've got our first expansion, Shattered Space, a bunch of mods, or rather creations that can be used alongside the vanilla experience, and a couple of vehicles, I think it's time to revisit the Starfield universe. I wanted to start by addressing a couple of base game changes that old players may not realize have actually changed in-game. First of which is this right here. This was a huge issue for people in the community when the game first launched. The fact that there were no maps. We had a blue wallpaper with a couple of dots on, and that was it. While this isn't exactly perfect, having a 3D space makes things so much easier, particularly for new players who want to understand the layout of New Atlantis. It's a really nice change, and I hope that Bethesda continues to add things like this and fix huge factors that have been an issue for players. Because when I sat down to write the script for this video, I didn't really find anything else that is notably different from the release version of this game. We have the addition of DLSS, but performance is still pretty sloppy. Maybe the visuals seem slightly better, but it's not massive. Yes, things like maps should have been included when the game launched, but it's nice that it's here and Bethesda are listening to a form of community feedback, even if it doesn't always work out as well as they would hope. The base game itself, I'm not going to go into too much detail about because I assume if you're here watching this video, you've played it, you've got your own thoughts and opinions on it. I thought it was pretty good. Just to summarize everything, I think there could have been a lot more they could have done to both expand the lore, the story, the characters. I assume what Bethesda originally wanted to do is build up this base, this foundation of a universe, and then let the expansions really go into detail about everything that we want to know about it. It's not going to be like Skyrim, where Skyrim is its own story and then you get extras. This, I feel like, was made to be expanded upon. Speaking of expansions, we do actually have Starfield's first official expansion, Shattered Space. Now, this was something I was incredibly excited for. I got the pre-order version of the game, and despite the controversial launch, I fell in love with the idea of Skyrim in space. So to see that universe expanding even more with a map, or a world rather, crafted nearly entirely by hand when the rest of the game felt kind of lackluster, I couldn't wait for this. And in all honesty, the first couple of hours of the expansion genuinely felt like everything we had been hoping for. The opening mission on a ship that quite simply shouldn't be here had jaw-dropping visuals, and there was just lore tucked behind every nook and cranny. It was just such a fun mission. And then you actually get to the main planet where all of this is meant to take place, and I couldn't help but be kind of disappointed. While the visuals were great and it did give me a sense of excitement, wanting to play more of Starfield again for the first time in a couple of months, it just felt quite dull quite quickly. I completed the main quest within a couple of hours, which was actually quite fun and exciting in certain parts, and I liked learning a little bit more about the story, but I completed it all in one sitting, and then pretty much every other side quest in the expansion in one form or another is a fetch quest. Now, I understand that those mechanics are pretty much the basis of every RPG. An NPC needs something done, and it's your job to do it, fine. But when you're taking down a space account for the 10th time to go and save someone, it gets pretty dull. And then you have the lore for Shattered Space, which is really interesting. It's so amazing how these guys are surviving, and you want to learn, you want to help, and you want to see the changes that you can make to these people, and yet it's left open-ended. And you feel like everything you've done doesn't really make that much of a difference. Actually, you just tear down a building. That's all you do to help these people. It doesn't really expand on anything related to the base game, which kind of scared me because, like I said earlier on, I thought the expansions were going to build this universe, and actually it just felt like a creation item, which we'll dive into in a bit. It didn't feel like something that was officially made by Bethesda to flesh out the lore of this game and make people love it even more. It was just a little addition. Simple things like when you have Andrea with you commenting on how she'll never be able to see her home again while being on her home planet, it all feels a little cheap, which ironically is not what the expansion is. It's half the price of the base game. For maybe 10-15 hours of content, you could literally go and buy No Man's Sky, a comparison that I'm not even going to make here, for the same price as Starfield's expansion. That sucks, and it bothers me more that if this is the quality of the first big expansion that Starfield is gonna get, what are the rest gonna be like? Creations, I think these could genuinely save Starfield over time. Bethesda announced that there are various creations made by normal people. They have to be verified, but normal people outside of the company themselves that can be installed while also earning achievements for the game. Now, this is a huge deal for me personally, and it does present an endless world of possibilities for the future of Starfield. I want to run through some of the creations I've played with so far, starting with one that I've already made a video on, the Rev 8. This is Starfield's Buggy, and it was a great addition when the game first launched. It's an official creation made by Bethesda. Should it have been in the base game? Absolutely, but genuinely, it was the first time that people who liked Starfield at launch got a little taster of what the future had in store. Sure, the controls were a little bit weird and it felt like a rushed thing, but it felt like they were genuinely listening when all the fans complained about traveling long distances and the boost packs that were just not an ideal way of traversing entire planets. Then they released the Deimon. This one's very similar to the Rev 8. If you're looking for huge changes and upgrades in terms of driving mechanics, you're not going to find it here. But still, it was a nice thing to have from Bethesda, but that really didn't have anything on what the community were able to add. If you open up the Creations store, you'll find a bunch of vehicles that look something like this, and what's better is that most of them work with achievements. This one here, the Neo 8 Speeder, is a vehicle that has similar mechanics to the base vehicle, but it can fly. Kind of, sort of. It does more of a hover, so you have to hold down the vertical boost button in order to fly, rather than typical plane or helicopter controls in other games. It's nowhere near what the Oppressor Mark II is in GTA 5, but it's things like this, made by content creators, that the game needs, with the support of Bethesda. Like the idea of being able to get to your destination in seconds, but also having the vehicle come with a weapon, be able to drive it on land if you want to. Dude, this is so awesome. And the fact that Bethesda isn't penalizing creators or users for using this thing, I think it's actually a really great move on Bethesda's behalf. Yes, you have to pay real money for some of these modifications, but in all honesty, if you're the kind of person that would be happy to pay for the Shattered Space expansion and you genuinely enjoy the Starfield experience, you'll love creations like this. Both the creations that are available now and those to come in the future. Now, of course, there are creations that add more quests and lore to the game. I've only had an opportunity to play with 2 or 3 so far. Let's talk about Escape and The Perfect Recipe. Both of these felt better than pretty much any quest and side quest in Shattered Space. Escape puts you in an escape room without any of your gear. Your job is to naturally escape. You make a couple of friends along the way, and I'm not going to ruin everything for you because I feel like this is one of the better quests and you should experience it for yourself. Although I am actually considering doing walkthroughs and like a top mod series for Starfield. Let me know if that's something you're going to want to see. But what makes this one so cool is the fact that there are various outcomes, different paths you can take, different ways of solving puzzles, and they're all genuinely really fun to complete with an ending that feels incredibly rewarding. Then you have The Perfect Recipe that starts you off with a chap who's having a really hard time of it, trying to rediscover who he is as an individual. The quest itself isn't particularly engaging, nor is it filled with giant spectacles. In fact, the whole thing revolves around making a curry. But there's a really wonderful message here, and great character development, lore, and backstory all rolled into this one little creation that takes less than an hour to complete. And it's things like this that excite me the most, knowing that there's a whole universe to explore, and that anyone can just come along with a beautiful story and some cool characters and plop it into the world. It turns Starfield into an endless world of possibilities that is actually supported by the developers. Then, as a final note, there are, of course, a bunch of achievement-friendly creations that just make the gameplay loop feel better and more engaging. Pocket Dimensions is one that I found particularly useful, being able to craft this little tablet that gives you your own strange dimension? I suppose it's in the name. But what makes this one so cool is, yes, it's supported by Bethesda, and there's actually a storage area here with unlimited storage. And you can access this from anywhere, so if you ever become over-encumbered in the middle of a quest or whatever, you can just teleport yourself here, deposit some some items, do some crafting, do whatever you need to do, and then return to your journey. And like I said, the fact that you're not penalized for doing this, it's so damn good, because the only alternative to getting unlimited storage in the game is going all the way to New Atlantis, to the lodge, and there's a chest there in the room, but accessing that when you're over encumbered is just a pain. Then there's other little UI tools like this one right here that is again supported by Bethesda, called Astrolabe, that lets you search and find any system in the universe. It's not an overwhelmingly brilliant tool, but it's definitely a useful one, because if you hear about a planet that's great for XP training or something like that, and you can't find it anywhere on the map, you can just put in the name, or like even if you don't know where all of your bases are, it will go ahead and show you where they all are. I would like an option to like toggle the names of what the bases are called so you know exactly what you're looking for, but like this is just such a cool little tool to have. So to wrap things up, after revisiting Starfield, I'd like to say that I'm still optimistic about its future. I know that Bethesda haven't been on top form for the past few years. I feel like personally they've been taking on way too many projects, and like many, I still have issues with the Starfield experience in some areas. I just hope that Bethesda continues to innovate and revolutionize the game as much as possible, expanding on things like the Starborn that really gives us experiences similar to Fallout's Far Harbor expansion and Skyrim's Dragonborn, only in this universe where the possibilities seem so much grander. But even if Bethesda can't, I genuinely believe that the community can. There are difficulties with the modding tools and many other technical elements of Starfield that most players aren't even aware of, that's just based on how the game was built, but I genuinely believe that if people set their minds to it, they can tell whatever story they want in this universe of unlimited possibilities. Anyway, that's all for now. I'm going to wrap up this video here. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch it. Drop a sub if you want to see more Starfield content, and once again, let me know if you want me to continue making a series where we talk about all of the Starfield creations, the good, the bad, and the ugly. I love your faces, you're amazing and beautiful, and I will catch you in the next one.